What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're taking a look through the midfielders that cost between 6 and 6.5 million. I suspect that most of you will already have one of these players in your draft, but if you're trying to build a team that's got the likes of Haaland, Salah and Trent, you're probably going to need more than one. So I'm going to go through all the options and then list who I think are the best three at the end as well. If you haven't already checked out Fantasy Football Hub, make sure you do. There is a link in the description below. If you sign up to one of their memberships at the moment, there's up to 50% off, and if you sign up and don't win your mini league, they'll give you your money back. There's terms and conditions in the link in the description below, as well as the link to get signed up. So this is the attacking data taken from Fantasy Football Hub of 10 of the midfielders in that price bracket that I think people might actually consider for their FPL squads. There's a bunch of names not on this list for multiple reasons, such as they've picked up an injury, they're not attacking enough, they don't have the minutes. These are the 10 that I think most people will be looking at right now, and we've got their expected goals and expected assists per 90 minutes from last season, and you combine those two numbers to get their expected goal involvement. And it's no surprise that Brighton take up a lot of the top spots. So March is top at 0.69 expected goal involvement. Then you got Matoma in third place, 0.61, and Gross in fourth place at 0.43. Mbeumo is the only other player from a different team that makes up the top four spots, and he's in second at 0.63. Now, just quickly on Gross, I think last year he was the highest point scoring midfielder for Brighton, but part of that reason was March wasn't playing in such an attacking role early on, and Matoma wasn't really playing at all. So a lot of Gross's points came from playing so many games. Plus, he was just quite good at the start of the season as well, playing a bit more attacking, whereas under De Zerbi, he filled in kind of in a defensive position in midfield, or even played right back at times as well. So there is a chance that Gross could end up being the best midfielder at Brighton if he's back on penalties now. McAllister has gone, and if he's employed in, or deployed I should say, in a more attacking role. But right now we just don't know if that's going to happen. So I think if you're going to go for a Brighton midfielder, you should take Solly March or Matoma, who are both very attacking. And in general, I think some people haven't caught up to how good Brighton's attack is under De Zerbi. If you look at expected goals for last season, like top 5 clubs, Brighton are in there, and I don't think that's necessarily a blip. I guess one thing to consider is they are in Europe this year, Europa League, so that might take a bit out of that squad. How will they cope with that? It can be difficult, especially when you're not used to it. But outside of that, if they do continue how they were last year, there's no real reason why you couldn't double up on the Brighton midfield if you needed players in and around this price point. I do like Mbeumo. I think he's very popular at the moment. I guess with Brentford, they haven't got Ivan Toney for a long time, or a long part of this season. So in some ways, that's good for Mbeumo because he's going to be on penalties. He's not necessarily going to play as the central striker. That could be Wissa if they play 4-3-3, and Mbeumo could be off the right. But he played that position a lot last season, and his attacking numbers are strong. And he's done well at times when Toney's been out. Now, that is a small sample because Toney usually plays a lot of minutes, but things are looking pretty good for him. And there's no worries about kind of European matches or anything like that. And he should be nailed on to start pretty much every single game. With Brighton, there is some concerns I've seen about minutes being dropped and, you know, rotation with João Pedro and Ciso, Buonanotte and stuff like that. But I think when we drill down to it at the core, March is first choice right wing, Matoma is first choice left wing. They're going to play a lot of games, especially at the start of the season, so I'm not really too concerned there. Between March and Matoma, the ownership levels are massively different. Matoma's like 40% owned and March is less than 5%. And I think given their attacking potential, I'm not quite sure why that's the case, given I think their minutes are both quite similar. So straight away, if you wanted to start the season with a slight differential, you could go for March over Matoma. Moving on to the other players and the other teams, Mudryk comes in 5th place at 0.41 expected goal involvement. That is on quite limited minutes because obviously when he joined Chelsea, he doesn't necessarily play every single week. And I think that's a problem going into this season as well. Pre-season might tell us a different story, But right now, if Sterling's going to be mostly used on the left by Pochettino, surely he's going to be ahead in the pecking order to Mudryk, who so far I don't think has really shown that much in a Chelsea shirt. Maybe that'll be different under Pochettino. There's a reason they spent so much money. There was a reason that Arsenal were looking at him as well. But I think if you're going for someone tried and tested in the Premier League, Sterling is obviously the one for that left wing spot, and he only cost 0.5 million more. So I think we'd have to see something a bit special in pre-season to want to go for Mudryk. Eze was a massive kind of bandwagon, I would say, towards the end of last season. Did really well once Roy Hodgson was in charge. Brought Eze back in the team. His underlying numbers are pretty good. 0.41 expected goal involvement. If Zaha leaves the club, Eze would probably be on penalties as well. He took, I think, 1 or 2 last season, and it does look likely that Zaha's going to leave. Not a guarantee, but keep an eye on that. I think under Roy Hodgson, there was definitely improvement. I think Eze coming in definitely helped, but he also had the fixtures, and I went back and checked the same fixtures under Patrick Vieira, and he won exactly the same amount of games as Roy Hodgson did. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they do from the start. But given how good Eze was last year, and he could be on penalties, he looks like a decent option. I think McAllister is one of those players where there's a bit of an unknown about him. His underlying numbers aren't quite as strong, but we have to remember a lot of the times for Brighton, he was used in a more, like a deeper role, essentially. He wasn't always playing as a number 10. He's probably not going to play as a number 10 for Liverpool either. They don't really play like that. But if he's in a number 8 role, where he gets forward, we've seen him very good in the final third for Brighton and obviously for Argentina as well. So he could do better than those underlying numbers suggest. I just don't think he's going to get penalties or anything like that. I think there's a case to be made that Liverpool do have better penalty takers than Salah, but given he's had them for so long, missed and then kept them, I don't think they're going anywhere. The 2 names on here I've seen banded about a little bit are Gibbs White and Johnson for Nottingham Forest, especially Gibbs White. I don't know, I just look at those expected goal, expected assist numbers. They just don't really jump out to me as someone, like as players I should really be that worried about. There's other players on this list that are just much better for just 0.5 million more, so I just couldn't see me going there. And I think with Buendia, the Aston Villa player that a lot of people would want is Jacob Ramsey, but he's picked up a injury and could be out for up to 10 weeks, so might miss the start of the season. I just think with Buendia, there's a quality player there, but he doesn't always have the minutes. Either he'll come off early or he might miss the odd game. So I think the obvious players to look at are the ones that most people are, March and Bomo Matoma, but there is a chance that Gross, if he has penalties, could be excellent as well. And don't forget about Eze. McAllister possibly. I'm just not sure I want to use up a Liverpool spot on him. It bodes well for the start of the season when those players with the highest attacking threat also have good fixtures to start off with. So with Brentford, you got Spurs at home in game week 1, then it's Fulham away, Palace at home, Bournemouth at home, Newcastle away in game week 5, and Everton at home in game week 6. I would say their fixtures are maybe slightly better than Brighton's, but there's really not much in it. Brighton have got an excellent fixture in game week 1, which is Luton at home, then it's Wolves away, West Ham at home, Newcastle at home, Man United away, and Bournemouth at home. So players from those two sides look pretty good. With Chelsea, I really like their game week 3 to 8. On paper, it looks great for an attacker. So you got Luton at home, Nottingham Forest at home, Bournemouth away, then Villa at home in game week 6. And if we look a little bit further than that, it's then Fulham away in game week 7 and Burnley away in game week 8. Now, to be fair, from game weeks 5 to 8, it's 3 away games and the other one is Villa at home. But overall, from game weeks 3 to 8, I think things look pretty good. The problem is I just don't think Mudryk's going to be an option from the start unless, like I said, he shows us something in pre-season. So if you want to target those fixtures that Chelsea have after Liverpool at home and West Ham away in game weeks 1 and 2, I think you spend a bit extra on a Sterling or maybe an Nkunku 7.5 million forward, or possibly go for one of their defenders instead. But ideally, Chelsea will hit the ground running because they're all so underpriced or potentially underpriced, and they've got that great fixture run from game weeks 3 to 8. With Crystal Palace, the fixtures aren't too bad, but the first 3, 2 of them are away, Sheffield United and Brentford, and the other one is home to Arsenal, so not necessarily ideal. Then you got Wolves at home, Villa away, and Fulham at home. So when you look at the attacking threat of the Brighton players and Brentford versus Eze, and then you look at the fixtures, it's hard to make a case that Eze is better, although he is on penalties, whereas with Mitoma and March, they're probably not going to be. Definitely not Solly March, and Mboma would obviously have them as well. Aston Villa, I just think, like I've already said, Buendia probably not a great option. They got Newcastle away, Liverpool away, and Chelsea away first 6 game weeks. I think with Villa, you're probably looking more at someone like Watkins, or possibly a defender to rotate and not have to play every single week. I don't know if I would be going for any of their midfielders. Liverpool, again, 2 away games in the first 3, Chelsea away, Newcastle away. With Chelsea, I think we've got to say they weren't fantastic last season. Similarly with the Liverpool defence, to be fair. But I guess you've got to expect some improvement there. So 2 tricky games in the first 3. At 6 million, McAllister has definitely got that potential to do better than that price. Whether or not it's worth going for straight away, I'm not sure. I'm always a little bit wary at the start of the season when a player starts with a bad fixture on paper, because if it goes wrong, because so many people are active at the start of the season, a lot of people are keen to sell straight away. The only thing that might save, like a Liverpool player, for example, is the fact they got Bournemouth at home the next game. But if he blanks again, and you got Newcastle away, Villa at home, that's going to be a lot of kind of sales out for McAllister. So I'm not quite convinced there, but as always, I'm open-minded and I'm happy to see what happens in pre-season. If he's getting forward a lot and we think his minutes are going to be good, he's definitely someone to consider. I guess when you think of the Liverpool setup, if they play like a 4-3-3, I know Trent goes into midfield, but the starting lineup is like a 4-3-3. You got Salah, Gakpo, Nunez, Diaz or Jota, someone like that on the left. Then you got 3 midfield spots: McAllister, Szoboszlai, hopefully I've pronounced that right again, Fabinho, Thiago's still there, Curtis Jones, etc. I assume their new signings will get quite regular minutes in the opening 6 weeks, but there is a bit of rotation possible there as well. So maybe something to think about. And then, like I said, with the Nottingham Forest players, Gibbs, White and Johnson, their underlying numbers are not fantastic. And then they've also got Arsenal away, Man United away, Man City away, and Chelsea away in the first 6 games. I'm just not having any of that whatsoever. Maybe there'll be options later on, but I just can't see why you'd start game week 1 with them. So I'm going to go through my top 3 options. I think when you combine the attacking data with the fixtures, it's pretty obvious who the top 3 should be. It's just about putting them in the order that you prefer. I've gone for Mboma as my number 1 because I think with Tony out, he's probably going to take up penalty duty. They could go to someone like Wissa instead, but I think it'll be Mboma next in line. I also think the fixtures are slightly better for Brentford than they are for Brighton. There's really not much in it, but I would give slight advantage to Brentford. They got 4 home games in their first 6. Even after Everton at home in game week 6, they got Forest away in game week 7 and Burnley at home in game week 9. So Mboma is quite a nice short-term and long-term pick. And unlike Brighton, I should say, getting the 2 mixed up, they don't have Europa League or anything like that to contend with. It's just Premier League matches. So I'm going to go for Mboma number 1. Number 2, I'm going to pick Mitoma. I know the obviously fixtures are the same with him and March's underlying numbers are a little bit better, but I always think when I watch the games I prefer watching Mitoma. I think he's a bit more exciting, and I don't think that March's numbers are so good that he is the obvious pick. So last season Mitoma was my top Brighton midfielder and I kind of stuck with that, and I think I'm going to stick with that going into this season unless we see something in pre-season that kind of changes my mind. But I don't think you can go wrong with either. Like I said earlier, ownership levels are hugely different. At the time of recording, Mitoma's 39.2% and Solly March is only 3.2%. So you could go for a differential straight away. In terms of minutes, I don't really see too much of a difference between either of them. I guess given what we saw last year, there's maybe a few less options to play on that left wing position, but Enciso, Buonanotte or even João Pedro could play there if needed, and a lot of those players could play in Solly March's position if they needed to as well. So I don't think there's a huge amount in it. I don't want to sit on the fence, but honestly, all 3 of those players are great picks. If you turn around to me and said, I'm only having 1 and it's Solly March, I would not argue against it. If you're only having 1 and it's Mitoma, I wouldn't argue against it. If you want 2 of them, happy days. For me right now, it's probably Mboma, but I'm happy to see pre-season to see if that changes my mind. So let's take a look at the rest of the players that were on that table at the start. I'm sure there's some of you out there that want a midfielder between 6 and 6.5 million, but don't want Mboma, March or Mitoma like everyone else is talking about. I think if I was going going for someone else on this list, it would probably be Eze. I think Crystal Palace's fixtures are okay. His underlying numbers are okay as well. He's probably going to start pretty much every game under Roy Hodgson. His minutes are going to be good. He's probably going to pick up penalties too. I think there's the least amount of question marks about him compared to everyone else on this list. I think Mudryk, you're not quite sure about his minutes right now. Like I said, there's obviously a reason they paid so much money, but I don't think we've seen it just yet. I think it'd be a bit of a leap of faith that he suddenly, you know, goes big under Pochettino. You could risk it, absolutely. I'd be a little bit more unsure. McAllister, we're not quite sure what his role is going to be in that Liverpool team. Will he get consistent minutes? Presumably so. But again, I think there's other players on this list that are kind of more sure things. Buendia, I just wouldn't necessarily trust his minutes completely. I think if things happen like they did last year, he's going to start the majority of games, but you're always going to have that slight doubt. And then with Gibbs, White and Johnson, they might be options at some point, but their fixtures are so bad to start the season, I just can't see why you'd put one in your team. The other one to talk about is obviously Gross, but I think at Brighton for the same price, you can get two better midfielders. Like last year, like I said, under De Zerbi, he did play quite a defensive role, always playing right back a lot. It may be that he's pushed further forward, but they've got so many options in their attack now. Does he need to be pushed forward? Could he just play in midfield instead? So if he's on penalties, that might slightly, you know, take him closer to Mitoma or March, possibly, you know, make him a better option. But I'd also want to see him consistently in that attacking role as well. So obviously, this video is coming out quite early. We've got to see all of pre-season to see what happens. If Gross and McAllister are getting forward, maybe the conversation changes. But right now, Mbeumo, Mitoma and March are definitely the top three. And the next one I would pick up is Eze. How many of these players have you got in your current draft, and which ones are they? Do you prefer Mitoma? Do you prefer March? Do you prefer Mbeumo? Or do you prefer someone else? Leave me a comment below. If you haven't already hit the like button and subscribe, make sure you do. It really helps out. I'm trying to hit 400,000 subscribers before the end of the season. And if you haven't already checked out Fantasy Football Hub, make sure you do. Link in the description below. If you sign up to one of their memberships with up to 50% off at the moment and don't win your mini league, you can get your money back. Terms and conditions apply. Check it all out in the link in the description below. I will catch you tomorrow for another video.